It is 6:03. I'm joined by Councilman Flynn and Councilwoman Vaccaro. First things, any comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3. Discuss the departmental monthly reports. Public Works.
Don Edwards, Public Works Director. I just so happened, besides this written report, I took a number of photographs over the past month. So I'm gonna show them and show what we did. So. This photo is Greenview Alley near Greenfield Park. Fixing a drainage problem that we had there before it gets to be wintertime and we have a significant icing problem. We still have a little bit of water there, but it's nothing like it was before. This is our fleet manager, Jason Barnes. That fire truck right there, he just got back from a trip to Wisconsin. We had a particularly complicated and unique problem. We had a gearbox that failed, but it wasn't just the part that was the problem. It was the design of the mechanics of the engine. So we couldn't just go get it fixed locally. And he had to drive 1,100 miles to Wisconsin so that the factory could do redesign, re-engineering of it. And they did not charge us for that work. Very pleased to show you the first part of the repaving of Gay Street. 2 blocks were repaved. You also see the brick crosswalk and intersection, and I believe it turned out nicely. We started collecting leaves. It's that time of year. Probably have another few weeks to go, or as soon as the leaves stop falling. That's M. Night Shyamalan. I think I've got 2 different pictures here. There was you're probably aware, I'm sure you're aware. There was a movie that was filmed on High Street. It was supposed to just be without filming, but they actually did film a scene. And in the middle there, you will see a street light. Public Works job was to turn that off. And we were able to turn that off using a computer. So one comment I got from the guy who I spoke to from the film company, he asked if we could talk to Philadelphia because they can't do it by computer, that they had to bring out a bucket truck, and I guess they take out the bulb or something like that. So I was pleased with that. This just shows you the yellow line down the middle. That's the end of our 2022 paving project. So we've completed all the work in the field, and we're wrapping up the administrative part of that. Canceled checks, I think, is what's outstanding. This is a photo of the dead tree in front of Borough Hall. And I'm hoping that there's a second photo in there. It shows it after. You got that? No? Okay. All right. But anyway, if you saw the picture, I mean, I think it's a big improvement. Is that it? That's it. Okay. You got Garden of Honor? Oh, yeah, yeah. All right, that's good. And then got the one for the Garden of Honor. Yes, and so that was getting kind of grungy. Had some black soot looking on the outside of it, so we power washed it and came out nicely. I think that's it. Okay, that's my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I appreciate the photos, helpful in the report. One question about paving.
Yes.
So will Pico be repaving on South High Street? And I guess maybe the first block of North?
Well, they're paving everywhere where where they're doing work as part of the Harmony project. I'm not aware.
I drove up last night and I don't know if they did it on Friday afternoon at 4 in a rush, but
Yeah.
it really looks lousy.
Yeah. Is it towards High and Gay Street where you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That should be. Yeah. Yeah. Our objective is to get that looking nice again as soon as possible. Probably next season. All right. You good? All right. I have a second presentation now if you're ready. Goose Creek training? All right. So I'd like to talk to you about Goose Creek drainage. I've been here 5 months and I think I've got a pretty good feel now for the extent of the problem. I'm going to give you like a high level view of the problem and the solution, where we should go from here, my recommendation. Okay, so this right here is near Greenfield Park, the intersection of Niels and Franklin. According to the FEMA flood maps, the depth of water at that intersection would be about 8 feet, you know. It shows that there's a major problem there. That's for a 100-year storm. So I'm probably just telling you what you already know, that there's a significant problem, but the FEMA maps back that up, and it appears that it's been this way for quite some time. So what are some basic causes of flooding? The size of the drainage area into the flooded area, the amount of impervious area, blacktop concrete in the drainage area, the bottlenecks downstream from the flooded area. When water backs up, the water level rises, and roads and houses that are built too low. What may not have been too low decades ago is too low now after all the development without stormwater detention. We did not learn the lesson about stormwater detention until relatively recently. So this right here is just an example of a bottleneck. Whenever you have a stream that is wider and deeper than a pipe like this, it's likely that you have a bottleneck. And when you don't, when the pipe is not big enough, again, what will happen, the water can't all go through there. It'll rise, it'll submerge that pipe, and then it backs up water all the way upstream from this point in the creek. So what are some possible solutions for flooding? Build stormwater detention upstream from flooded area. Requires large amounts of expensive land that may not even be available. Remove downstream bottlenecks. Examples are widening the creek and replacing culverts and bridges. Most of this work would be in downstream communities, also expensive. So those are two big problems right there. One is it's going to cost a lot, I'm sure. And the second thing is we don't have control over the municipalities that are downstream from us. So this is a picture of Goose Creek at Thornberry's Goose Creek Park. It's wide and open. It's not a bottleneck. If our creek looked like that up and down Goose Creek, we wouldn't have a problem, but we do. So next steps, prepare a regional drainage study that identifies drainage problems, possible solutions, and cost estimates to implement the solutions. We know that there's a problem. I know with some confidence that we have problems downstream. The water would not be 8 feet high at the intersection of the Niels and Franklin unless there were problems downstream and things weren't not opened up. Identify sources to fund a regional drainage study. Possibly work with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission to apply for grants. We've been in touch. And since we will need cooperation from downstream municipalities, find a political solution to gain cooperation. Flooding is experienced in the borough, but is most likely caused downstream from the borough. So we may not have real motivated neighbors because, to spend money that really solves our problem, we need to address it regionally, I believe. This is just one option that I thought of. I thought it would be pretty cool to combine two projects. And that would be a possible trail from Greenfield Park to the Goose Creek Park in Thornbury. If we have to open up the creek, I would think it would be real nice to add a trail in there. People could walk from Goose Creek Park and walk into Borough and downtown, and all that. I think that's something that should be considered. So, again, this was just like a high-level presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Edwards, I only got one question.
Yes.
The Rubenstein project is being built, the high rise. I know Mr. Khan's building a reservoir somewhat under the property to hopefully collect the water and slow it down.
Right.
But what about the property still going downstream from Goose Creek? Right at Barnard Street there, where it looks like it's 8 feet wide, directly up against the building.
Okay.
You're familiar with that?
I'm not familiar, but I can go look at it.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of debris, vegetation in that section right there. I'm just, wondering why, as preventative maintenance,
Right.
we could clear out those things with a backhoe or something to give more availability, or
Right.
do we have to ask permission from the DEP to do any remediation work?
Maybe. Probably depends if there's an easement. I mean, if it's a water course in the state of Pennsylvania, we might be able to do something in there without an easement.
Yeah, it's right there at the street, as you're going, before, I believe, as soon as you go under the train trestle,
Right.
if you stop
Right.
and look to the right, you'll see what I'm talking, because the creek, I'm from Delco, the creek comes back up. It's underground
Okay.
all the way from McDonald's to
Right.
that spot.
Right.
And that's where the creek comes back up,
Right.
and it's 8 foot wide and full of vegetation.
Right. I know this is not in the borough, but it's right, Montgomery Avenue near McDonald's, a big flooding spot. Yeah, I'm real curious if the pipes aren't too small from there going down to the open creek.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
We've had many, many meetings with state, PennDOT, Gene Blum, Carolyn Comita, Sappy, Heron, Chrissy Holohan. I had to think what the last one was. And the biggest thing that we're still looking for, unless you found it, was a 30-year study that was done that Obi said he had on a shelf that actually told us how to fix the problem. And you probably didn't find it.
I didn't find it.
No. So, but there was a study done.
Right.
And, so that's just a thought. But I'm concerned about that. The building is right next to the creek where it comes back up out of the ground.
Right.
So,
I
thank you.
hope it's high. Hope the building's high.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I probably should mention, there really are two other solutions or two action items that could be taken. One is to do nothing. I'm not surprised that, this hasn't been fixed. I mean, it's really pretty tricky. Another solution, which isn't practical, is to raise everything down there near Greenfield, including the park. But I'm sure it's cost prohibitive, but I'll just mention it.
Just a comment that I'm sure will be unpopular, but the park itself, the borough already owns,
Mhm.
and seems to be sort of the beginning or the end of the problem. I mean, could that be a passive giant wetland to,
Okay.
resolve some of the issues? And my second question is,
Mhm.
Relative to the grants, I noticed in Panoni's report that they identified, I don't know, half a dozen or more grants. Are there, but I didn't see any specific projects. So part one of the question is, do they have any specific projects that, they have in mind for us to chase a grant, or do you? And does
Yeah.
this fit into
Yeah.
anything that they identified?
Okay. For the first part, I don't know. I mean, that area might seem pretty big in Greenfield Park and all, but in relation to the whole drainage area and everything going on downstream, I don't think that would have any significant impact on flooding. As far as the project, I mean, the regional study is the next thing to do. Just so that we can identify exactly, not just, we just have a general idea right now, but if we can pinpoint where the problems are, at that point, we can go after other grants for, replacing culverts or widening the stream or what have you. When I met with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, she told me about a couple grant opportunities that seem to be, very applicable to what we want to do to find out what's going on and hopefully fix it. So, we have some ideas. But the next thing really is the Delaware Valley, and I think I've mentioned this in my report, but the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, they're hiring grant funding navigators. And they're close to hiring one. They want to hire two. And I'm kind of waiting on that so that we can collaborate with them to identify grants, fine tune the project, the grant application. They'll help us write the grant application. That's kind of what I'm waiting for right now.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping your vision large and understanding that this is a much bigger problem than one intersection or two.
Yeah.
I've lived through water situations. I've watched houses being raised to try and save them and then watched them wash away. So thank you for realizing that this is a bigger problem and that this is really at this point a political issue as much as anything.
Yeah.
And please keep pushing
Sure.
to make this happen.
Keep pushing until somebody says no.
Keep going.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Wastewater.
Good evening, Sean Mitchell, Superintendent from Creek. To start with Taylor Run, upon inspection this past month, a final clarifier had a steel plate and a manifold gasket leak. In-house, they welded new plates back on, replaced the gasket. Everything is back to normal and running well, and a utility water pump was torn down, inspected, and rebuilt in-house. On November 15th of this month, the PA DEP laboratory accreditation will audit the Taylor Run laboratory. This happens every 3 years. Goose Creek had theirs last November. This year is their time. The tertiary filter system is up and running. Training and operation and maintenance they're tinkering with, and everything seems to be running fairly smoothly. They're just going through a couple little things going through it. We do have pictures of that. Maybe not. They were the second page of the report. The upper left is actually one of 3 units that are in the building. With the control panel, the water comes in. The upper right is actually the filter system empty. It'll come in through the upper right corner near the chain, and all those, they look like discs, will spin inside of it with the filters capturing the water. The lower one is actually in operation in full. They're running it right now. We're actually testing to make sure that everything is working within design and working well with it. So it should be up and running and doing well for us.
Impressed what you guys can do in-house, so thank you. Appreciate it.
We're trying. At Goose Creek, all the biannual oil changes and lubrications on the clarifiers, mixers, compressors were completed by the staff. A polymer motor mixer was replaced. A secondary clarifier we had, a gearbox and motor shorted out. Thankfully, we are able to take one of our final clarifiers and drop it, which empty it. We took the gearbox off of that, put it on the one, the other clarifier that's down because it's more pertinent to run that one, easier to run. We were originally told 8 to 10 weeks to get a new one. I was dreading and having to come to tell Bernie that we had a large expense. But it was actually, I didn't even have to get a purchase order. So it was, I believe, under $1,000. Shipping might throw me over. And they are 2 to 4 weeks. So it should be anytime soon that we can transfer back and go back to fully operational with the plant. All the Goose Creek employees passed their yearly DEP lab accreditation PT tests, and we had to update our SOPs per the DEP, so they've been all trained in the upgraded SOPs.
Excellent. Thank you. Nice job.
Have a good evening.
Parks and Recreation.
Evening, Keith Karowski, Director of Parks and Recreation. I'll let the report do the speaking for itself, but I did want to touch base. A month ago, I was here thanking quite a few people for helping bring back the Chester County Restaurant Festival after a little hiatus. Well, I'm here to do the same thing again. On October 26th, we brought back the return of the annual Westchester Halloween Parade. And it's really no easy task to shut down town on a Wednesday night in rush hour. And the folks that were involved, Westchester Police Department, Corporal Malicki and Dave March, PIO, Steve Pellman, the fire chief, Varday Jacobs, the crew leader from Public Works, and Thomas Barton, who's with the fire department, pulled together a color guard for us at the last minute. But literally, I lost sleep for days before this event. I was a little out of my parade practice, but everything went according to plan. We had 1 or 2 minor glitches, but for the most part, anytime you're doing an event in town, you're going to have traffic and parking issues. But besides that, the reports from all the folks I just mentioned came back really positive. With that being said, the biggest issue we faced with that event, it's so labor intensive. We've got crews of police and Public Works and the parking department with all the no posting signs that we are having some discussions, at least in a preliminary state, moving into 2023, of having another event besides the parade. Something that would still be beneficial, involve the town, involve people that can still come and be a part of the university marching bands, the high schools, the cheerleaders, the dance teams. We still want to do something that could be a community large event. For 2 years during the pandemic, we did the drive-through trunk or treat out back here. Fun event, not to the scale of that. I mean, we're not shutting down the entire town. We're shutting down a small section of town. So there's no, plan specifically in place, but my discussions with the police right now is like, what else could we do that would still be a really good time, a way to celebrate Westchester, keep everyone involved, but just in a different framework. So as we come across those ideas from the Parks and Rec Department, the Recreation Commission, the Police Department, I'll bring that information back to you. I don't want to do away with these events. It took us so long to get them back. I don't want to do away with them, but maybe we just got to tweak them a little bit.
And when you say labor intensive, just so we have a base for comparing it next year, can you define that?
I don't have the specific numbers, but put it this way: the to shut down the town for the parade is akin to the Christmas parade, the restaurant festival, the chili cook-off. I mean, it's literally all hands on deck. The police got to bring in extra guys from different surrounding departments. We bring in, bomb sniffing dogs. We want to make sure the event is as safe as humanly possible while we can still enjoy it and it doesn't feel like you're on lockdown. But again, there's probably 2 crews up there from the Public Works Department. I myself had probably 25 to 30 volunteers that were at the event. There's so many moving parts that day of, and a lot of it's the borough resources that we're using. especially from police and public works. I don't have the specific numbers, but once I have those from both departments, I can present those to you guys as well.
I think that'd be helpful in describing
Sure.
what you want to do.
Understood.
Forward.
Yeah. In a very short time of putting that to bed and thinking what could be next, I'm thinking like a trunk or treat type event on steroids. Something that we would do out here. It's close to the police. We're not shutting down the downtown. We may have to close some streets. We can still use our side streets to host marching bands, dance teams, cheerleaders, things of that nature, and still make it fun for the general public to come out to. But again, those plans are in the very preliminary process.
You tell your therapy worked because I watched you run down Gay Street. So workman's comp should be going back to zero.
Both my knees are killing me the next day.
I saw you running backwards. The Hoops Park would be a lovely place if we're going to do something because there's plenty of parking over that way. And integrate our parks with maybe something big that way. We could just shut down the corner and use the baseball field or use the park up top or whatever. It's
open
more
ideas.
spooky being around Halloween, and it'd be a little bit more fun to try something different.
Sure, absolutely.
But yeah, it went well. 1 hour.
1
went
hour.
Well,
I don't remember being that short before, but
but it went well, and all the kids enjoyed it because they were able to get home and get to bed for school the next day, which was good.
I think Marshall Square Park is probably more haunted, so.
Bill Scott still lives there. Yes, you're right. Yeah, I mean, he trolls the place at nighttime, but there you go.
I'll just throw in the kids' perspective that I have heard. The old parade where they threw the candy was definitely the better one. The marching bands are key. You gotta have the marching bands.
absolutely.
We gotta they're the things that the kids that I talk to, they miss the candy, they love the bands, and they want to be out there in their costumes. So those three things, I think we're pretty good.
Just to go back a little bit, I was the Grinch that stole Halloween a few years ago. The reason the parade is now on a Wednesday is because it was historically on a Thursday. And in my time here and before my time, it was always on a Thursday. And we just got really lucky with weather. So when you have the parade on a Thursday, you can't have the rain date on a Friday because then you lose all 3 high school marching bands, cheerleaders, and dance teams. And you can't have it on Friday to have a rain date on a Saturday because then you lose the university. So we moved it to the Wednesday. Again, I think it was 2015, 2016 when I literally had to cancel the parade for the first time. And I was just abused. And I think it was the very next year that we changed it to the candy/donation stations. Again, having run that event for several years and events in general, there was just so many, thank God nothing happened. I mean, we saw so many things that could have gone wrong. And it just from kids horseplaying and having a good time, but it's like, yeah, this is an event we're trying to make to have safe. And I see, buddies tackling each other in the street right in front of, a fire truck, So again, I don't want to take away from the event in that time of year. But yeah, we're going to look at different aspects on how to just change things a little bit.
No, I think my kids, they remember throwing the candy. And then they feel like it just there hasn't been a Halloween parade since 2015 or whatever it was.
19.
And that's their impression. And I'm like, no, it happened and maybe it wasn't what, so they actually went. I couldn't make it, but they went and they had a blast
Nice.
being there and they saw a bunch of people and it was wonderful and the marching bands were amazing. And it was short. I didn't think they were going to make it up there and they did. So that was all really great. But I think it could be really wonderful to set up something different and just rethink the whole thing. I would be all for it. And anything you need, I would be in support.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have the municipal engineers report.
Good evening, Will Williams, Sustainability Director. Everhart Park is actually the most haunted. If you've never done a ghost tour with Malcolm Johnstone, I highly recommend it. It's actually kind of scary as hell. But that's my recommendation. So again, this is our second iteration of this report. It's a little cleaner than last month, but still a work in progress. We just had our meeting with Pannoni this week. This afternoon. We sit down with them every month, just myself, Sean, and Don Edwards to review all of our projects. So we're still working on cleaning up this format, but I'll buzz through a couple of the highlights real quickly. Pannoni completed an initial assessment of a roof on this building, and we had some, but not all of the in-depth, the core testing and thermal imaging done today. The low bidder for that deep dive work, they just wrapped up a roof on the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait, based in Kennett Square. So we have a really good firm working on that, and their first insight from spending about an hour on the roof was it's not as bad as maybe the worst case scenario that we were kind of wrapping our heads around. So that's maybe good news. They also did some high level feasibility work on expanded HVAC at our public works building and level 3 electric charging feasibility for if and when we start to electrify some of our heavy duty equipment down at public works. Our annual MS4 stormwater report was submitted to DEP in October. Actually, it was September 30th. This is exceptionally dense reading. It's actually prepared by Gilmore and Associates, who's our stormwater engineer, but it's one of our milestones every year. We closed out a PICO grant for street tree planting, which is very much a stormwater project. Our match for that comes out of stormwater because of the stormwater benefits of our street trees. This week, we're breaking ground at Greenfield Park on a stormwater project right along Franklin Street there at that culvert. There's a brief project overview and plans posted on the website if you need a refresher on what that project is or want to help get the word out to your residents. There's a thing posted at the bottom of the webpage about that. That project is funded primarily by a grant from Chester County Conservation District, and the landscaping will occur in the spring. So I already know we're going to get complaints. The infrastructure is going in the ground, and it's going to look really lousy until April. There's just no way around that given the time of year. We're prepping 3 grant applications for December. There's a special ARPA funded round for stormwater and sanitary sewer projects. We have a stream restoration project in our capital plan for 2024-2025 in the vicinity of Hannum Avenue and West Biddle Street. So we're going to prepare 2. There's a big program and a small program of this particular grant. We're preparing for the large applications, parallel applications, one for that stream restoration project and the other for the Goose Creek electrical substation. If you recall, we submitted an application to the county for that. We still have not heard, and we can't really wait anymore. And the deadline, for the grant is December 21st. So we're going to start working on 2 applications. If we get the county award, we'll go in for our stream restoration project. If we don't, or we haven't heard, we'll go in for the Goose Creek project. That's a bigger, more expensive project. It's more urgent. It's probably a more competitive application too. And then on the smaller grant project size, there is a plan for a stormwater project along Goose Creek at the Public Works facility, basically between the parking lot and Goose Creek. We can do a pretty good stormwater retention and quality project there. Some modest retention, prevent that water from getting into Goose Creek. There's one other option, which Don didn't mention, for helping Goose Creek, and it is a massive decades and decades long deployment of stormwater infrastructure in the watershed. If we detain and infiltrate enough stormwater by building BEMPs, again, over decades, maybe we can turn back the tide. It's an ambitious long-term goal, but it is an option. So I think that's all. I'm also on deck for the traffic engineer. If we want to jump into that, or do you want to take questions on this?
Yeah, you can dive into traffic.
Okay. So this is the first time that the traffic engineer report is on our agenda, and again, we'll have a better formatted report moving forward. But our focus with traffic planning and design this month has really been on three different things. Gay Street, of course, is a hot topic. We had a really good downloaded conversation from the public meeting the first week of October. We discussed the various grants for implementing the vision that they laid out, as well as phasing that vision to make it a little more digestible and breaking it into 2 or 3 smaller projects to help get it done. The 2 most likely grants, there's a Chester County CRP grant and DCED grants that are both due in the first half of next year. They're eagerly waiting council's decision on what the closure will look like 2023 and beyond. So as soon as that decision is made, they'll probably be the first phone call for us to help plan and execute that vision. Second of all, we have a pretty large streetscape improvement coming down from PennDOT in the South High Street area, basically between 7-Eleven and it's not quite all the way down to Rosedale. They stopped short of the Rosedale intersection, but they're doing a lot of work there. It's pedestrian safety focused. So think signals, crosswalks. I think they're moving 1 traffic light. Pretty large scope of work. The idea is to bid it out this time next year, and start the construction in 2024. So we will have a lot more information about that. This is the first meeting that has occurred that they asked us for in this calendar year. It's sort of a snail's pace over there, but we'll have a lot more information about this moving forward. They're finishing up preliminary design and then collecting feedback on that design, of which we have some around brick sidewalks. And then lastly is our own streetscape project, which we have discussed, of course, much recently at High Street and Minor. That's really the focus. Same thing, signal work, crosswalk, bump outs to calm traffic, and make sure people are driving safely in our downtown. Again, those are the 3 areas of focus for traffic planning and design right now, and we'll have a better written report for you next month.
Thank you.
I have questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Pause too long. Okay. I love traffic planning and design.
Yeah.
And I love environmental issues and the water issues. So you have a lot of projects going on, and I'm just going to throw more things at you. The light at Rosedale and High, it sounds like you're not going to make it all the way down there, and it's maybe not our kind of light situation, but that's a big problem for pedestrians, vehicles going straight, and vehicles turning. So I would really love if traffic planning and design could make some efforts there. One of the reasons that is coming up is complaints about Price Street traffic. So, the university's bottom rung is Rosedale there, and then at the top it is Sharpless, but the traffic's on Price.
Right.
So that Price Street corridor, the traffic is an issue for the residents up there. And so my suggestion, one of many suggestions, is to look into bump outs that have rain gardens along 300, 400, 500 block of Rosedale. Of course, they also want stop signs, but I'm going to talk to you about
Rosedale or Price?
Price.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Price.
You mentioned that last week, and I looked at our storm sewer map, and in those vicinities, from living in town for so long, I knew where where the trouble spots were. It's where you go 2 blocks without a stop sign or a traffic light. So zeroed in on that location there, and there is pretty good collection infrastructure there, meaning there's a lot of area draining into that section of Price Street. So it checks a lot of boxes in terms of what we need for citing a good project.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Keep going with that. That might be that's what I wrote down. So those 2 things. Thank you.
Regarding High and Rosedale, there was a very high level conceptual plan in the last comp plan for redoing that intersection. And we talked about it with traffic planning and design. And I don't really remember where we landed on it.
The issue of the pedestrian crossing phase has come up before, and we want to coordinate that with the Highway Safety Improvement Project that PennDOT's doing. So it's on our sticky notes.
I have talked to different people about High Street corridor and the pedestrian traffic, but I think that light in particular is as much a pedestrian problem as it is a vehicle traffic problem. Like it's bad to try and turn at that. I just avoid it. Just don't go down High Street, which is sad. That's how you get to my house.
Yeah.
So.
It all depends if it's between classes or not.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can
Some-
zip through, yeah. Or you can be there for half an hour.
Exactly. So we need to phase it.
Yeah.
Phase whatever happens, so that it is adjustable as well.
Yeah, it was interesting. The last thing I'll say was, I have this conversation with PennDOT about their sort of vision, which is really kind of like handed down to us, and they're very academic in their approach. And then us in traffic planning and design who live here and breathe here, we're thinking like, you can't do this. Like you're going to have so many kids just jaywalking and we were trying to impress upon them the unique challenges of the university and jaywalking students, basically. They hadn't wrapped their heads around that.
Been driving on High Street and watch them get hit by cars, and you're like, it is the car's fault, but you are
Yeah.
not thinking.
We pointed out all the places that the university had put up those chains. Yeah, that's to point students towards the crosswalks. And PennDOT hadn't really conceptualized that yet. So yeah, we're working on it.
And it applies too to the Gay Street, High Street intersection, but differently. The pedestrian and vehicle traffic thinking has to be real world. And putting up barriers like gates and chain links and whatnot, it works. It
Yeah.
does work. So please keep that in mind. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Before we move on to item 3B, I did have one more question. I don't know if it goes to Mr. Edwards or maybe Mr. Metric. Last month, there was an issue raised by Chris Lang about low-lying tree branches in the streets. Did that go back to the tree commission, or where does that lie at this point?
We don't need the tree commission to be involved in that. It's a maintenance issue. So we've discussed it. Like I said, I'm 5 days back, but I think we want to eventually get to a point where we have routine inspections of borough and property, and we're identifying these issues and not hearing about them from residents. That's our goal. So, to answer your question, it's being addressed. I don't know exactly the pace of how it's being addressed yet, but I agree with you. I think if we're asking, residents to abide by standards in our code, the borough needs to set that example and follow its own rule book.
Thank you. Okay, item 3B, discuss notification process to alert residents when roadwork is occurring.
All right, this came from a massive email chain from residents over in the 7th and First Ward, being very upset that they were not able to get out of their driveways and transverse across the borough, and that the utility companies really don't give a damn. They come to work and they're going to do what they're going to do, and they're just going to, the residents just have to deal with it. The biggest question was that if they're going to work in the area, maybe we should require the utilities to have to put up some type of, like the signs they use for elections. We're working in this area from this date to that date, so the residents know what to expect when they come out and see, infrastructure company there just digging up the streets. PICO does notify, Aqua does notify the residents, but they never give them the longevity of the projects or, what they say they're going to do. So I said, this came out of residents actually complaining on Mayfair Avenue. And so their request was like, if we're going to do this in 2023 and 24, maybe on the corners of the street, have a placard letting people know, when the work's going to be done.
If I can too, I think that what we've learned dealing with Pico and Aqua and all the heroic work being done downtown is that there's minimum compliance with public notice, which translates into door hangers, letters, things dropped off at people's houses that have a phone number to call. And then there's just transactional situational awareness. And that takes management. It takes routine and repeated and consistent communication between our staff and the contractor's staff to address these issues. It is just common sense. You just don't park your bulldozer in front of someone's driveway or your skid steer. That's just dumb. And so sometimes people do dumb things, and that's going to happen. There's going to be some things fall through the crack. Obviously, we're managing chaos. But I think what we need to concentrate on as a team is building that constant, consistent communication with the people who are on the ground, because they're usually third-party contractors. And the person sent from either the utility or the contractor to be kind of the face of communication is never the same person who's actually on the ground. He or she is in many different municipalities dealing with many different people. So it's essential that we know who we need to talk to at any moment to get issues sorted out, knowing that sometimes people are going to do dumb things.
The main thing is we want to make sure the residents know that we hear them.
Agreed.
And that when they do have a concern, the council does pay attention to them. And even if our Public Works Department, buys those signs, they're relatively inexpensive. Work's being done in your neighborhood from January 1 to January 30th, and when they're done, they just get thrown away. And just like parking signs, there's not lots of times there's not trees on people's streets, street trees, where we could put those no parking signs that tell people. Communication, I think, is really important. So,
Thank you. Item number 4, approve the October 2022 meeting minutes. Any comments? All right, looks like we're good. Any other business?
One thing. So last month, we put out to bid a HVAC project at Taylor Run. It was a 2022 capital project. We briefly thought about pushing it to 2023. And then we collected 7 quotes, including a CoStar's quote, and ultimately ran up against our purchasing policy and had to put the project out to bid. The only way to get it, have the proper time on the street to collect bids and to get the project done this year really was to put it out in October and then take the bid tabulation directly to council next week. We do not have a bid tabulation this week. The bid is open till next Monday, and then we're going to have a bid tabulation for review Tuesday. So I just wanted to let you know, normally we would come to this committee and you would make that recommendation to council. But again, it was the only way to make the timeline work. So didn't want this committee to be surprised by that on the agenda next week. But I'm guessing you would have recommended going with the lowest bidder.
Thank you. Responsible bidder.
Yes.
If there's no other business, meeting is adjourned. It is 7:51.